What is the absolute worst thing a former friend has done to you? This happened to me the other day. My buddy was in the US Army and deployed in Afghanistan. His Humvee convoy had an IED detonate underneath them and he sustained multiple shrapnel injuries, including a piece of steel that punctured through his nasal cavity and into the frontal lobe of his brain. After surgery getting everything extracted, he suffered memory loss, motor control impairment and loss of hand-eye coordination. After his discharge, I worked with him several days a week trying to get his mobility and memory back. Some regular activities: going shooting at the range, disassembling and cleaning guns, playing Guitar Hero, it was popular at the time, reading stories and then quizzing him on what had transpired, etc. One day we got back from the range and I had to run to go handle some errands, and he asked if he could borrow my Glock 17 to take home and clean so he could work on his repetition and coordination assembling and disassembling it. I thought nothing of it and told him that would be fine. Over the next week I kept calling him to ask when I would be getting my gun back, and he kept giving me the "I'll bring it over tomorrow" routine. The weekend comes by and I'm hanging out with our mutual friends, one of which happens to be his brother. I mentioned what had happened and he said, "Yeah, you won't be getting that back." I was like, WTF, and he told me his brother had admitted getting addicted to C and painkillers while in Afghanistan. After his surgery his doctors had him on a plethora of medication and he had recently been getting weaned off of them. His brother had caught him a few days before this night high off of his butt and demanded to know where he had gotten the money for blow. To this day he still swears someone stole my gun from him. We are no longer friends. TLDR. My buddy got injured in Afghanistan and I tried to help with his recovery. He stole one of my guns and sold it for blow. Oof. I thought that was going in a rather dark direction. Good to know he sold the gun rather than used it to blow his brains out. Ruining my novelty throwaway for this, but it has to be said. I went across the country on 2 days notice to drive my uncle around because he had broken his leg. I was there for 7 months and ended up doing all the cleaning, cooking, laundry, pet care, etc. He got frustrated with me a lot, but one night, he asked me to do the dishes, which I had been taking care of the whole time anyway, and went off on me when I didn't immediately respond. He went off saying how my lazy and ungrateful attitude caused my mother's fatal aneurysm 2 years back, basically blaming me for my mother's death. I held my tongue and proceeded to treat him with a basic level of human decency until it was time for me to fly back home. He has burned the only bridge he had left in his sad, pitiful life. There is no one else able or willing to care for him in his illnesses. I am done with that whole relationship. He is as good as dead to me. You've got to have a lot of willpower and compassion to not flip out at him after he says something like that. Sounds like you know when to cut your ties. Unfortunately, not everyone gets that kind of clarity about the toxic people in their life. In high school I was snowboarding and got a really bad gash on my shin that had to get stitches and bandaged and all that. Well, it was about sophomore year and not many of my friends could drive yet. So my friends and I walked to this faraway parking lot where lower classmen have to park so we could take my buddy's car to lunch. Well, the guy whose car it was had been my best friend since 3rd grade and had only recently started getting high school cool and stopped being as nice to me. Well, I'll limp up to the car. Everyone throws their backpacks in and starts climbing in. The last kid to put his backpack in takes mine out and puts it on the ground. So I get out to get it thinking he's just fricking around. Well, they drove away and left me in this parking lot off campus to limp back to school and try to get some lunch before the period ended. I was livid and immediately texted the driver, my best friend, with all the typical frick you fricking F high school nonsense. A couple months later he was partying at another friend's house in my neighborhood and called me drunk to apologize for what he did and tell me he felt really crappy and he invited me over to drink with them. I went, and everyone was cool, but my relationship with this friend has never been the same and I know he's a pretentious freaking butthot now, so I limit my interaction with him. TLDR. I got a leg injury and my best friends ditched me in a parking lot to go to lunch and I had to limp back to school. I was introduced to a guy in college by one of my friendly neighbors. They had been friends for a couple of years. He and I went on a few dates, messed around a couple times, it was going smoothly. About a month into this timeline, I throw a party, during which I walk into the kitchen to refill my drink and find the guy and my neighbor making out. I say, "What the frick?" and she proceeds to pull the half asleep drunk guy out of my place and into her apartment next door, where I presume they're going to have frick. I continue partying with the thought, "Welp, I guess that's done." 15 minutes later my neighbor returns to the party, tells me that he passed out naked on her bed, so she came back since he wasn't much use. Dumbfounded, I was. Let me state that he was never my boyfriend. We had simply gone on dates, and I didn't think he was mine, or anything, but even so it's a pretty WTF situation. Long time lurker, first time poster. Be gentle. I developed a friendship with a guy who worked for another company and ended up convincing my business partner he would be a good addition to our team. We hired him and he got paid over twice what I made to grow our business. While maintaining all aspects of friendship, he convinced my business partner that I was a liability to the company rather than an asset. The day after, I babysat his kids past midnight so that he and his wife could have some time to themselves. Since we had all been working so hard, he let me go after lunch. Fired from a company I helped start. 3 months later, snaked 5 clients and went to work for a competing firm, leaving my former partner high and dry. TLDR. Guy befriended my to get job, screwed me out of my job, then screwed the company. Sounds like a pure mature villain. I had a friend for a couple of years who had been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. I often took him places because he didn't have a car. One day he needed a ride. At the time I was working graveyard shifts and sleeping during the day. He texted me saying he needed a ride, but I was asleep with my phone on silent, so it was a couple of hours before I got the message. He totally went off on me to the point where I was crying. We didn't talk for a few days and I got over it, but he never apologized or anything. There were a lot of similar incidents like that, but our friendship finally ended when I got married. I wanted to introduce my husband to my friend and repeatedly invited him over for dinner. He declined and said in an email to me that he was sick of hearing about my husband and me getting married. He had dated several women during our friendship and I'd always listened when he talked about them and had even met and hung out with a couple of them. But he couldn't be happy for me that I'd found someone. That was the last straw. Cut off communication and haven't talked to him since. I appreciate the sentiments, guys. He wasn't totally a bad person or anything. Besides his personality disorder, he'd been dealt a pretty rotten hand in life and we did have plenty of good times together. Just wanted to touch on the subject of him having feelings for me. I think he did, but not in the same sense of love or caring that normal people feel. Early on in our friendship I actually had feelings for him and told him about it. They were not reciprocated and I got over it. We stayed friends and that did not come up again. Ever. I think that when I finally got into a healthy relationship that made me happy, it was more like he probably thought that he lost someone who had once been in love with him. Even though he never felt that way about me. Or at least he never said that he did. I invited my friend to crash a wedding dance with me. We had one drink and she wanted to go to a different bar downtown to stalk her ex. I didn't know that part until we were almost there and she tried to call him and I saw her phone. We get there and he was, to put it mildly, cold to both of us. Because he's there with his girlfriend. She gets more drunk really fast and becomes super emo and leaves, without telling me, when all my stuff is in her car. In November in Wisconsin, I am alone at a bar without my coat, cell phone, contact case, wallet, or house keys. About a year later I go to visit her at a club she works at. We drive to another bar and I leave my van parked there. We take a taxi cab back to the club. We ride with random guys who were going to a strip club but instead drop us off 2 blocks from the bar my van is at. She insists we go back to the club again. We get a ride from my friend who can't get in because they didn't think his passport looked like him, so they confiscate it and he can't go into any bars the rest of the night. 15 minutes till bar time. She leaves. No idea where she went. I have her purse and I tried calling her, but later found her phone in her purse. I have no coat. It starts raining. I waited outside for 30 minutes. She comes out laughing with the DJ. I was near tears because I was staying at her place and even if I can get to my van I'm too drunk to drive. She is mad at me for being upset with her. She was super drunk and I didn't want to share her bed, so I ended up sleeping on the living room floor that smelled like pee while her roommate watched Carlos Mencia all night. I haven't spoken to her since. While her roommate watched Carlos Mencia all night. Jesus. Your friend was a jerk, but her roommate sounds inhuman. Something like this happened to me once. I was out at dinner with a few friends. Some of them were going to go see one movie, the one with the blonde Wilson where he crashes on his friend's couch, that I didn't really want to see. Another friend was going to see one of those extreme skiing movies where people jump out of helicopters onto mountains while people film them. I figured, what the heck? I'll check out the skiing movie. Skier friend gives me a ride across town to the movie. We get there and it costs $25 to get in, which I, of course, did not know. I had less than $10, but enough for a ticket to a normal movie. When I told my friend I didn't have enough money, he smiled and said that sucks. Then he turned around and went into the theater. That was a little before 9 PM. All of my friends were either at work, at the other movie, or gigantic douche bags that wouldn't even give me the key to their car so I could sit in it until the movie was over. I started walking home, and at 11:30 I was finally able to get one of my friends on the phone after he left work. He picked me up and drove me home. I was only halfway there at the time. I am no longer friends with the skier. I wonder if he tells the story of how he went to see a skiing movie with a friend and when they get to the theater suddenly the friend doesn't have any money and expects him to pay, so he ditched him. My best friend in high school was a year older than me. Since she was so close to my family and everything, she came with them to my high school graduation ceremony. That night, I had to stay home with my family that was in town to celebrate. My best friend Samantha went to a party my boyfriend of 2 years was at and fricked him. The worst part is how they both cried and apologized and said it was the biggest mistake of their lives. Tried to blame it on being drunk. Funny thing is, my ex-boyfriend later admitted they coherently and intentionally fricked on the front porch at that party so no one would see them and tell me. Lost my best friend and my boyfriend, but thank God, they're both complete failures at life now. I now have wonderful friends and a wonderful man in my life. Always a bright side to these crap shows. TL. DR. Ex-boyfriend of 2 years and best friend fricked on my high school graduation night, after she came to my graduation with my family. Not as bad as some of the stories on here, but here it goes. One of my friends invited me to her 21st birthday dinner party, but since I didn't use Facebook at the time, she texted me instead. She wanted to make it absolutely sure that my girlfriend and I could make it to her birthday dinner because there was limited seating before the pricing at the restaurant doubled. The dinner was at 7:30. The day came and I got to the restaurant at around 7:15. I usually arrive early because I hate people who lag at any time. I look around the restaurant and don't see any of our friends around. I ask the hostess if anyone showed up for a 7:30 reservation and she tells me there weren't any reservations for 7:30. Mildly irritated, I give her a text to see what the situation is and she says that the dinner is moved to 8:30. She then texts me again and says there is no room for me at the table anymore. At this point, I'm pretty irritated and I'm wondering if I should still show up at the after dinner party. Since we have been good friends for almost a decade, I decide to go. I go inside the DNBs and see her there and wish her a happy birthday, and I jokingly told her to buy us the first round for the miscommunication at dinner. She tells me she's not paying for any drinks tonight. So the night goes on and she ignores that I even showed up to her party, and on the way out I see her walking with her friends. I go up to her and tell her happy birthday again and that I'm leaving. She looks at me and keeps walking on. I was disappointed in her and decided that we weren't friends anymore. But I didn't blow up in her face because I didn't want to be that guy who makes someone on their birthday cry. It sucks losing a friend for almost a decade, but friends don't do that to each other. Using a throwaway because he's a redditor, although this will probably never be seen. Probably going to be long. You've been warned. My wife and I have been together for almost 12 years, married for nearly 2, been together since high school, blah blah blah. Recently, we have been having problems in our relationship. My wife had my best friend on BlackBerry Messenger, which never was a big deal, but suddenly I had the feeling something was different. Asked her to stop messaging him since he commented on her crap on Facebook a lot. She said okay, but was secretly texting him and deleting it. They both convinced me that I was crazy and paranoid due to some medication I was taking. So I quit taking it. I found some messages that he was coming down to do some work in our city and wanted to talk to her. I confronted her, but she swore he never came down and they were only going to talk about our relationship. I believed her. I was still paranoid but not as bad. She suggested I talk to him about our problems and asked for advice for mine and my wife's relationship. Everything was good. For a while, I ended up installing a text logger on her phone. I know, and found that they had been meeting when she got off work and having relations. Needless to say, crap hit the fan. Her and I are still together, working on our relationship. It's been 2 months or so since I found out. Did I mention he and I work at the same place in the same department? In the same room? Oh yeah, he was the best man in my wedding. Oh, just remembered we have 2 children and 1 more on the way. The conception date is right around the time she started fricking him, but they swore they used condoms. TLDR. My life is a Maury episode. Dump them. When I was about 16, I thought it'd be a great idea to have some friends over and have a shroom tripping party. About 7 people with 1 sober sitter. One of my friends couldn't come, so we invited my friend Jay, not his real name, who we felt a little sketched about, but I didn't want extra mushrooms sitting around in my room. That's a risk. Parents are gone. We're all tripping and having fun. J2. I took a 1/4 ounce of mushrooms. Just for perspective, about a third of the way into the trip, Jay decides to throw my other friend's Guitar Hero controller into the wall. It breaks. The serene piece is gone. Something is wrong. He proceeds up to another friend to give him a shoulder massage, an uninvited one for sure. This friend freaks out and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Jay removes his pants, revealing a massive boner. For reference, all of us minus. Now, Jay are straight. Talk about awkward. Jay begins destroying my room, babbling incoherently at the top of his lungs. I remember these distinct actions. Jay runs into and tackles my floor lamp like a tiger might. He begins chewing on my alarm clock. Jay also decided to sit in my nice leather suit chair, on his bare, nasty butt, and pretty much shutted on it. We tried to talk him into putting his pants back on, but none of us wanted to touch him, so it didn't get done. The group decides to leave him downstairs in my room until he comes back to sanity, hoping for the best. Hours pass. Jay returns upstairs, still pantsless. We urge him to repants. He reluctantly agrees. Shortly thereafter, Jay leaves to go get weed. We lock my door. My dog, who had been in and out of the house, up and downstairs the entire time, came up to us later. One friend went to pet her, and lo and behold, jizz on her head. A lot of it. Only one culprit, Jay. Ultimately, he completely trashed my room, caused 3 out of 6 friends to experience bad trips. The damage list is as followed. 1 peed on bed, top sheet sporadically covered in shards. 1 Sharpie, covered in crap stains. We think he put it up his butt. 1 broken alarm clock. 1 broken lamp. 1 broken Guitar Hero controller. 1 cummed on dog. Suffice to say, we haven't been friends really since. TLDR. Friend wrestling with depression and his gender identity tripped mushrooms, ruined shroom tripping party. Comes on my dog at some point during the whole ordeal. Jay took an 1/8 of medium high quality mushrooms. No one else went insane. This is the best worst story I have ever read. My good friend broke up with his girlfriend, who was a mutual friend. Warned all my other single friends that if anyone even looked at her he would chew their nuts off. My friend's ex-girlfriend was my current girlfriend of 5 years, best friend since high school. A month or so passes and I'm talking to my friend about their past relationship. He was telling me how much happier he is now and loves the path he's going in and whatnot. Later that night I come home and amidst other conversation with my girlfriend I began to talk about what me and my friend were talking about earlier. Before I even got to the main part of what I was trying to say, she started acting very strange. I knew something was up, so I played along and just let her talk. She broke the news to me that she has been fricking him for the past 2 months and they were planning on telling me after my friend got back from a trip he was going on. Needless to say, I lost it. A week or so later the girl who originally got dumped by my friend came over to see how I was doing and to catch up on things. We fricked a lot. Wasn't planned, just happened. The fricking turned into dates, which turned into us dating, which turned into us living together, and we have been for the past few months. Best part is, my friend who stole my previous girlfriend didn't know about it until he tried to get the girl he dumped back. Him getting turned down and then finding out what we were doing was the sweetest revenge. Dang, the unclear pronouns made this impossible to read. I was prom dress shopping with 3 of my friends when I had a huge panic attack. All 3 of them were aware of my panic disorder, and they knew I was having a really off day. I had asked them before we went to reschedule our shopping excursion, but they got extremely bitchy, and so to appease them, I went. The store was extremely small and was overflowing with all sorts of dresses. There was barely enough room to move around. The sales associates at the store were extremely overbearing and would not, under any circumstances, leave me alone. They kept shoving different assortments of dresses on me, asking me questions, and judging my appearance in extremely belittling ways. I'm not in love with these sorts of activities to begin with, and this was just way over the top. I started having one of my worst panic attacks. I was dying, it was so horrible. I escaped the store to the outside and tried my very best to calm down. I started crying because I was so humiliated. My friends came out extremely angry that I ruined their shopping experience. They weren't even looking for dresses. It was supposed to be just my little trip. They started screaming at me and they threw my purse and mobile phone at me. They left me there, on the side of the road, having just overcame a panic attack and feeling like a wreck. To this day those girls are still angry at me, and won't talk to me. If I ever run into them, all I get is glares. This happened 3 years ago. I recommend drilling a hole in the end of an aluminium bat, adding 3 cups seawater, and 2.5 cups beach sand to it. Reseal the hole. Swing with vim and vigor. When I was in high school, I was bored and surfing Facebook, looking at the pages of my middle school friends. I saw that one of the guys was listed as interested in men, which was a big surprise because I thought I was the only gay guy from my middle school. I sent him a message to see if it was true and to start catching up. He confirms it, we start hitting it off, and after a few days we set up a date and he gives me his number. I'm excited because I haven't seen this kid in 2 years, but we were really good friends in middle school, so I'm thinking this will work. The day of our date arrives and I give him a call to make sure everything is okay, but he doesn't pick up and the message for his voicemail doesn't sound like him. Eventually I get a text from him saying the date will have to be postponed. For the next few days I call him, but he never picks up. After a few days the same thing happens, and the date is postponed by text. He hasn't been communicating with me in any way other than these 2 texts since he gave me his number. Finally I get a call from him, and super excited I answer it. It is some guy my age, but someone definitely putting on a fake voice. In the background I can hear a few people laughing quietly. The person on the other end tries to get me to drive to his house, and giving up on that raunchy talk. Suddenly the people in the background stop being quiet and I hear about 5 people burst out laughing. Turns out he was never gay. One of his friends put that as his FB status as a joke, but he decided to keep with the joke when he saw me as a target. We were really good friends in middle school. It really upset me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.